Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must-read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
Peace. This is the enemy's public, and I am Bro.Nasir. I hope everyone's enjoying this beautiful Saturday evening. This evening, we're going to talk about Western degeneracy, objectification, and hypocrisy. Now, the West, in particular, I want to be talking about. The West, in particular, they want to be seen as the standard bearers, the example of civilization to the world with absolutely no justification. If you want to be the world police, the world's so-called humanitarians, while domestically human needs are put and remains on the back burner. Human suffering has never been a priority of the United States government, of this government that uses the noblest of words to describe its values. Excuse me. Yet the only thing that the West altogether values is capital. President Kennedy said, it's not what you can do, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country, meaning to give and never receive. And it remains that way. Taxpayers pay for police departments that show us the utmost disrespect, and we pay their salary, and they disrespect us with impunity and immunity. Yet the West feels that they have the moral authority and credibility to tell other nations how they should conduct their business. The feminist movement, which is a government operation, use our women to increase their numbers to get women's rights, when the United States to this day doesn't respect women's rights. women have been manipulated into thinking that freedom and rights, expressing themselves, is wearing less and less garments, being objects of a man's sexual desires. Now, nations should be mindful of when they see tanks, aircraft carriers, and soldiers from the United States on their soil. They should be very mindful. The humanitarian aid that the United States offer is very subjective. The United States boasts on their freedoms, rights, and their military might. The freedom of speech, especially, is one of the most subjective of all. So-called rights. Also, as long as you're saying what they want and what they agree with, you're free to say it. Yet if your truth is insulting to them and counter to their lies, you're censored, even silenced, even if you say it in good manners. The United States in particular, they're passing out freedom. Freedom. You don't have to pay for it. Just be dumb. Now, the West takes pride in its jurisprudence also, when that is also subjective, because it doesn't work for everyone. Look at how many people who are incarcerated because they couldn't afford a paid lawyer and had to get a court-appointed lawyer who tries to get their clients to plead, most case scenario, while our tax dollars pay for the lawyer of police officers who shoot us, assault us, kill us. We, the taxpayers, pay for their defense. The system, for the most part, works for a certain class of people. Yet and still, the West, in its arrogance, want to be the moral example to the world, while making evil fair seeming is the order of the day in operational practices. The hypocrisy of Western civilization is on the surface too deep. The aid that is provided to other nations comes with a price, if it comes with a price, it makes it a trade. Yet we must always be mindful when negotiating and making deals with people who only make deals that benefit them exclusively with no fair exchange, making a mockery of peace and prosperity. Salute to my brother Relentless. Thanks for tapping in. Salute to my brother Big Dog Philly OG. Thanks for tapping in. Again, they make a mockery of peace and prosperity. Peace is the absence of anxiety and grief. Prosperity is the state of being successful while thriving. Yet the hindrance of the Western civilization to other nations' prosperity is the constant, frequent practice. It's actually the American way. While maintaining the attributes of freedom, justice, equity, liberty, falsely, of course, racists hate to be called racist. Yet how do they respond to being called a racist? They respond by doing something racist. It's the same as calling a hateful person hateful. How do they respond to being called hateful? By doing something hateful. They possess the sentiment of hate while not wanting the stigma as being a hateful person. It's a part of their deceptive intelligence. Now, we're talking about Western degeneracy, objectification, and hypocrisy. That's what we're talking about. Now, what people are allowed to do as entertainers further shows the degeneracy and the hypocrisy of the Western so-called civilization. When the ones who are the most shocked and disgusted are oftentimes the executive producers of such filth, the creators of the casting couch, being appalled that someone is singing and rapping about what they actually do, or reenacting it in a movie. What we see on TV is actually how some of these people behave in real life, and it's a lot worse in real life. And it makes them self-righteous hypocrites that they will so-called be appalled, and they'll have this selective, performative outrage that something happened. Can you imagine the greed of the West? You know, it's the most problematic. This is a nation that takes or talk about world hunger while they waste tons of food every day. They'll throw food out. They'll rather throw it out than give it to some hungry people. Can you imagine a nation who produces more weapons than food? That's the Western Hemisphere. They produce more weapons than food. Yet the food that is produced and put in supermarkets are the equivalent of putting a gun to your head. The food industry and the military industrial complex are both merchants of death. One is just instantaneously, you die right now. And one is eventually, gradually. If we keep eating the wrong things, it's going to kill us. It's going to. But I see it like this. No one in the cemetery is deader than the next person. They're equally as dead. It don't matter how they got to the cemetery, they are equal. And basically, we're living in a society that in death, it's the only equality that we get in a society. When you're dead. Now, I have, of course, I have a few videos that resonates with me, and it supports what I'm talking about: the Western degeneracy, objectification, and hypocrisy. The word peace is spread out and it's made a mockery of, because if you make peace on a basis of a threat. Peace to my good brother Smoke Signal. Thanks for tapping in. If peace comes to a nation by a threat, that's not really peace. I always say, if there's not a fair exchange, somebody's getting robbed, and peace would never be the result of that negotiation and that deal. Milestones, thoughts, peace. Thanks for tapping in. When you talk about peace, or when we talk about peace, even when we're speaking to each other on these platforms, I wonder if the brother in particular, because it's mostly the brothers, when they come up and they say peace, do they want peace like the absence of anxiety and grief and confusion, or do they want a piece of the action or a piece of, the conversation? I wonder what type of peace, or what peace are they talking about, because it's the same as somebody saying with all due respect. Most of the time when they say with all due respect, they're about to disrespect you. So I wonder, whether we are, whether it's good or bad, whatever we are made in America. Wherever we are. Now I'm going to present this video. And we're going to get into the presentation. This man resonates with me, where he talk about and things he point out. It's my exact sentiment, the things that he point out concerning the West. Check it out.
Western misconceptions about Islam. I was promptly disinvited because apparently I'm controversial. I did hesitate actually to accept the invitation in the first place because I told the host that I'm not strictly speaking a religious speaker. He had a number of da'is and comparative religion debaters who were going to be on the panel, and I figured they would be sufficient for their discussion. But anyway, I did accept the invitation, the momentary invitation, because frankly, I wanted to redirect the whole inquiry, because in my opinion, this whole proposition is misguided. I don't see any point in correcting Western misconceptions about Islam generally, when in fact their misconceptions about their own so-called civilization are much more debilitating for them. I think that's much more serious. If you can correct these misconceptions, then I think Islam can pretty well speak for itself. And the whole idea of explaining Islam to these people while they are living in a state of abject confusion and abject ignorance about their own society, well, it just doesn't make sense to me. In fact, I think it just contributes to their delusions about the West, because it presupposes that they are in some sort of a position to judge another civilization, another belief system.
And that's most case scenario. The United States in their self-righteousness love to judge other societies, other nations, when the West whole, there's a misconception about the West, and the West hasn't gotten its act together itself, but they love pointing the finger and being the moral authority with nothing to suggest that what they say they are is the truth. They use these noble words constantly, and They want to be the world police, unjustified, when they'll say, we're going to support other nations. If you're going to be the world police, if you're going to be the peacemakers, you got to make peace. You can't use the mockery of the word peace and you're not making peace. Now, there's wars going on in different areas of the world. And the United States is picking and choosing sides. It doesn't make you a peacemaker. If you're choosing a side in a war, you are a warmongerer. And as much as bombs are being dropped all over the place on the Gaza Strip, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Hezbollah, wherever the bombs are being dropped, when you hear about the body count, and whatever you say and do is weak. And as a matter of fact, if you're constantly sending weapons of mass destruction to these areas and refuse to condemn the actions of warmongers, you could place it to the warmongerer. And that's the hypocrisy of the West.
We're supposed to explain to them in a way that will align with their completely inaccurate understanding of who they are and what kind of a society they live in and what kind of a so-called civilization they come from. Like, for example, we're supposed to convince them that Islam respects women's rights as if they respect women's rights. We're supposed to assure them that Islam does not oppose liberty as if their society does not oppose liberty. We're supposed to tell them that Islam is not violent when they are the most violent civilization that has ever plagued this earth. So it has always seemed to me that step one is getting Westerners to actually understand what the West is and what it isn't. I don't think you should ever take an approach to them that affirms their delusions in any way whatsoever. I mean, how are you gonna get someone to understand the truth about your civilization when they are completely immersed in falsehood about their own so-called civilization? Like, I'm supposed to convince you about the moral rectitude of Islam while you are the least moral so-called civilization in history? No. You need to know yourselves. You can talk to each other about women's rights, but you can't say anything about that to anyone in the global South. When you talk about respecting women, well, it's like Diddy talking to his mother or something, you know, talking to someone who doesn't know that man, who doesn't know what he does, who doesn't know how he behaves, and who just thinks the best of him. No, the global South knows what you did and they know what you do. You wouldn't get to know the BTK killer by talking to his wife and family or his co-workers or the people at his church. I mean, they tell you how wonderful and mild-mannered he is, how decent he is, how respectful he is. No, you need to talk to the people who he tortured. You need to talk to the victims who survived his attacks. That's how you'll know what kind of a man he is. If you want to know how much the West respects women and how much they believe in human rights and dignity and so on, then you need to talk to their victims and see if they agree with their propaganda.
Who they should talk to when it comes to human suffering and who America respects or disrespect. The people to talk to is us. When it comes to us being, oppressed, that's who they should talk to. Because if you ask us how we're treated here in the wilderness of North America, we will have a different story to what they're telling the world. We'll tell the world something different. A few of us are comfortable, with how we're treated because we can go and get, a job, a white woman or a white man, we can go get one of them, and we could, ride off into the sunset, happy. And we'll think that we have risen above the condition of our people, especially those of us who have a little something and can look down on the rest of us. We'll say, no, it's okay. I have money. But what did you do to get to where you're at? Is the question.
Did you believe in equality and women's rights when you were raping Congolese women in public? When you were committing mass rapes in Algeria as counterinsurgency tactics? Did you believe in women's freedom and equality when you locked women in Namibia in concentration camps and raped them en masse? Or when you basically decriminalized raping African women because you thought they weren't actually even human? When you raped Angolan women in refugee camps or forced Indonesian women into sexual slavery or committed widespread and entirely routine and approved of sexual violence across Vietnam, across Cambodia, Laos, and so on, and in Burma. What was that? Feminism? And when you raped Filipinas en masse, writ large, where were your sophisticated values then? I know I'm not talking about ancient history. Yes, you did it in colonial times, and you've kept doing it ever since. You never stopped enslaving women, raping women, murdering women in the global south. You never stopped doing that. You were doing it in Iraq, you were doing it in Afghanistan, and in Haiti, and in Bosnia, and in Syria. Yes, in fact, when you all calculate your rape statistics, as bad as they are, the way you calculate them, you fail to include all of the rapes that you commit overseas. When you put together how many of your own women get raped and assaulted in your own country, you should actually add to that all of the women that you rape and assault in other countries.
Not only that, all the women that were sexual assaulted in their rank and file. There's several women in the United States military who have filed sexual harassment charges on their superior officers. And some of these women end up missing and or found dead after filing charges. So they can't even keep their hands off their rank and file, the women in their ranks.
You talk about immigrants coming to the West and being criminals, but you never sent anyone but criminals to the global South. All your Western Enlightenment colonizers, all your praise the Lord and pass the ammunition missionaries, all your God bless America soldiers, all your degenerate businessmen, your so-called best and brightest that you sent over to our countries, who came to our countries to civilize us and Christianize us, to save our women from oppression and misogyny and our backward ways and our backwards cultures. You only sent over rapists and torturers and murderers. That's who you sent over to civilize us. Why, I don't know how you can even have the gall to pretend that you ever cared about women's rights, when all that you ever showed us in terms of women's rights is that you think you have a right to our women. And that's not even mentioning the misery of the woman over there in the West. Why, you raised her from childhood to be an object, just a decoration to be enjoyed by all and sundry. You teach her to conform to the ever more degrading societal standards, to wear revealing clothing, to be a sex object, to be eye candy. And then you have the audacity to claim that you believe in women's rights and equality. I mean, even your female Olympic athletes, who are the best at what they do, you require them to dress like pole dancers in their competitions. And all you do is ogle them, look at them and gawk at them instead of appreciate their discipline and hard work and training and skills. You created OnlyFans and taught your women that what you truly value is degeneracy. You know, she could go to school, she could get degrees, she could become a doctor, she could become a lawyer, should become an engineer or a CEO, but she'll never get rich faster than if she gets naked on camera and defiles herself for strangers. That's what your society rewards women for. You know, a stripper can make more money than an executive. You're teaching them what you want them to do, what you want them to be, because your whole system denotes value exclusively in terms of pay packages. So you are implanting in women's minds and imposing on women's psyches that this type of behavior is what makes them valuable in your society. You know, more than half of the women in your society, more than half, feel pressured into performing abnormal sexual acts that they're not comfortable with just because their partners have warped their brains on pornography. So now they expect their wives and their girlfriends to act like porn stars. Meanwhile, most of those porn stars are out of their minds on drugs and numb from childhood trauma. But you want normal women to act like that. And you're mad if they don't. 87% of college-age women report being compelled to do these types of abnormal things sexually that they don't want to do because of your great feminist society. Girls as young as 13 say that they feel pressured to try to look and behave just like women in pornographic videos. 13. And because you dismiss the necessity of marriage, promiscuity has become normalized in your culture, making women feel compelled to become sexually intimate much earlier than they're comfortable doing. And they're made to feel like something's wrong with them if they don't do it. And then you gaslight them into thinking that this is freedom. You gaslight them into thinking that this is women's liberation. You're psychologically abusing the women in your society on every level. 69% of girls in the 5th to 12th grades report that magazine pictures influence their idea of what they're supposed to look like. 45% of women report feeling pressure to try to achieve a certain body shape or a certain size. And 1 in 5 women report that because of this, they experience body dysmorphic disorder, wherein they think that there's something wrong with how they look. They think there's something wrong with how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them if they don't look like a supermodel in some magazine or look like a porn star in some video. You know, you claim to believe in women's equality, but the data shows that women in your society are still objectified and still marginalized. 60% of women report feeling pressure to try to dress in a way that is socially considered to be attractive or sexually attractive by societal standards, which just means showing men more of their bodies, exposing more of themselves to men. 45% of women report feeling that they need to show more skin and show more skin that they're even comfortable showing in order to be considered attractive in your society. Look at what you're doing to women. The media perpetuates this culture of objectification, with women being depicted in revealing clothing in 70% of advertisements. Now, women are exposed on average to 5,000 advertisements per day. And 70% of those advertisements feature women in revealing clothing, meaning you are constantly messaging to women that they have to be as undressed as possible if they want to be socially acceptable. That's your society. So of course your women are suffering. They're suffering from psychological consequences. The psychological consequences of these types of pressures, this type of gaslighting and manipulation. At least 1 in 5 women report experiencing anxiety or depression due to the pressure that they feel to wear revealing clothing that they don't want to wear. And they're obviously more likely to develop dissatisfaction and low self-esteem about themselves and how they look. And you pressure them into looking and acting like porn stars, pressure them to have sex before they're ready, and pressure them to do things in the bedroom that they don't want to do, not to mention the real physiological detrimental repercussions and the ramifications and the consequences of promiscuity on a woman, mentally and emotionally and physically. That's why your women are the most depressed, the most neurotic, the most medicated, why they have the most anxiety, the most stress, the most mental and psychological illnesses, because they live in the most woman-hating society in the world. And you still have the nerve to expect us to assure you that we care about women. Everything about your civilization declares your utter contempt for women. I'm telling you, you don't know who you are. You don't know what you are. You don't know what kind of a society you live in. You live in a world of lies.
This is the West. What he's saying about this hemisphere is the absolute truth. He's not lying about nothing that he's saying.
Forget about trying to correct your misconceptions about Islam. You have nothing but misconceptions about your own so-called civilization. It's not a civilization, it's a hallucination. And it's absolutely comical, the extent of your lack of self-awareness about
Hallucination, it is an optical illusion, and it's an outright lie. See, what you see on TV tell you how it's supposed to be, but it's not like that. Or the drama that they put on the TV shows where, you know, the bad guy gets caught and he's punished. No, it's not like that. They're telling us how it should be. Again, when a lot of these things surface and it comes to light, I don't like the performative shock and the performative disgust that some of these people display, especially when you know what's going on. These politicians know what's going on. These entertainers know what's going on and know what goes on. So when you see them expressing shock and disgust, just know that they're entertainers and all of them are actors. It's performative and they're putting on an act.
About your own culture, about your own society. You know, when I lived in the Middle East, I had Americans back home worried for my safety because they thought that every place in the Arab world was nonstop bombs going off, violence and bloodshed all the time. Meanwhile, you've had over 650 mass shootings in America just last year. Not to mention the fact that most of the bombs going off in the Middle East are American bombs being dropped from American warplanes. Whatever violence we have in the Muslim world, you brought to the Muslim world. America's #1 export is violence. As a matter of fact, it's one of the only things that you still manufacture over there.
Yep.
It's one of the only things you still excel at, better than anyone else. Is Islam a religion of peace? You must be joking. You've dropped 500,000 bombs on us in just the last 25 years and killed over 1 million Muslims in just the last 25 years. That's not even including the current genocide in Gaza that you're committing. Again, this is like the BTK killer wanting someone to assure him that they don't subscribe to violence. What are you even talking about? Your whole society, your whole so-called civilization is violently extremist, more than anyone else has ever been. You love to threaten your enemies with bombing them back to the Stone Age without it ever.
That's the truth. And just, you know, you can't tell a society, you can't tell children, you can't tell civilians that violence is not the answer when that's how you solve your problems. Go to any video where there's a police encounter and see how fast it escalates. The very first thing they do if you don't comply to them, even if it's an unlawful request, the first thing they do to you is threaten to put you in handcuffs. And secondly, they throwing you to the ground and they are aggressing you violently. So they can't tell people how to behave and tell people that violence is not the answer when that's how they solve everything, through violence. The currency that circulate this society is only backed by one thing. Not the silver standard, not the gold standard, not the platinum standard. No type of standard. It's backed by military might and military might alone. And the money is fiat money, not even sanctioned by the United States, the World Bank, the Federal Reserve.
You're registering in your mind that this is a Stone Age mentality. The only difference between you and a caveman is that you have gadgets, but you're the land of the free, right? Islam is so strict, it's so rigid, you know. Muslims don't have any freedom. Meanwhile, America has more laws and more regulations than any country on earth. You have more.
Did you hear that? You want to go to other countries and free them with this democracy when we have the most laws. We have the most restraints. But we're calling it freedom. And they're telling you you have freedom. That's why I say they're giving out freedom. It don't cost you nothing. Just be dumb. It's the only kind of freedom that we're offered here. Freedom. The illusion of a choice. Putting two things in front of you and saying you have a choice between these two. That's not a choice. What if I don't want either? It's not a choice.
More laws and more regulations than Saudi Arabia, more than Afghanistan, more than any Muslim country. You can't even remodel your kitchen in America if you're a homeowner, which you probably aren't. But if you are a homeowner and you have a kitchen and you want to remodel your kitchen, you can't even do that without a permit. You have to get a permit to remodel your own kitchen. Your government decides what food you can eat, what food you're allowed to eat, what food is legal for you to eat. Meanwhile, they allow genetically modified foods, fake foods, foods with all sorts of additives and chemicals and what have you. And a farmer, you know, who grows food on his own land, he's not even allowed to sell food to you right from his land, right from his farm, right out of his crops, fresh, without FDA approval. He even needs government approval to give you an apple from a tree. Your government even decides how hot your shower is allowed to be. It's absurd. But of course, you'll defend all of those laws. You'll defend all of those laws because you'll say they're there to protect you. Okay, if you say so. But you don't have a choice, do you? You don't have the freedom to not follow those rules, do you? We have a comparatively minuscule set of laws, most of which are self-imposed. With no external monitoring, no external enforcement, we follow them by our own conscience. But what you mean by how strict and how rigid we are, what you're talking about is basically all the sins and the debauchery that your government does allow. So that's actually the freedom that you're talking about. You're talking about the freedom to be uncivilized, the freedom to be primitive, the freedom to be hedonistic. And that's what makes you, in your mind, more civilized than us. The freedom to be uncivilized. You think that makes you more civilized. And somehow that makes sense to you. I'm telling you, your society, your so-called civilization is playing you for a fool. They're even fooling you about your own prosperity. I mean, take the United States, the richest country in the world, right? But just look at different states in America. Take a state inside of America, any of the 50 states, and look at it as if it was a country. Look at its GDP, look at its standard of living, look at its quality of life, look at its infrastructure, and so on. Say if you took Mississippi, if Mississippi was a country, or Idaho, or Montana, or New Mexico, or Kentucky, if those states, those American states, if those were countries, well, they'd be equivalent economies. Economically, they'd be equivalent to an Argentina, or to a Colombia, or to Thailand. They would be low to middle income countries. Those American states, they would be low to middle income countries. That's the reality of your life. Most Americans live in conditions They live in economies within their state that are exactly the same as countries that you would regard as third world countries, as developing countries. That's how you're living in real life. I mean, unless you're among the so-called coastal elites, your state is basically a third world country. And even in those coastal elite states, you know perfectly well that there are cities and neighborhoods inside of those elite states, those rich states. There are cities and neighborhoods that are just as poor as any poor city in the global South. But they've got you thinking that you're better off than people in the developing world. They've got you thinking that you're better off than people in the global South. Why, if most of the states in America were countries, they'd probably be trying to join BRICS. And the same goes for the UK. If you're not living in London, if you're in, say, the north of England, it's the same. It's a third world. You're in the third world. If you're in the north of England, you're in the third world. You're in a developing country. You are deeply and comprehensively misled about your societies, and you still expect Muslims to answer you about anything? You're standing there butt naked in a cowboy hat, telling us that our suit is out of fashion. No, there's no point in trying to make you understand us when you don't even remotely understand yourselves. The whole world has been indulging you, has been indulging the West, and what they want to believe about themselves. We've been indulging you for far too long. It's time for you to start justifying yourself to us. We're not going to pretend that you're in any sort of a position to demand us to justify ourselves to you, when the reality is that no one is, and no one has ever been, as violent, as oppressive, as misogynistic, as restrictive, and as opposed to liberty and to human dignity as Western so-called civilization.
And that is the absolute truth. That is undeniable truth. Now we're going to go to the illusion of Western educational superiority. This is a Middle Nation video also.
Well, I mean, everyone everywhere, in every country, says that their education system is bad. I don't think I've ever been to any country where the people thought that their education system was, that they were satisfied with their schools, much less, actually proud of their education system. Everyone thinks that their education system is the worst. But there's another common opinion, which is that whether people say it or not, if they're in the global South, there's a holdover idea from colonialism that education in the West is superior. The aspiration is always to get a degree overseas in the UK or America or wherever else, to get a bachelor's or master's or PhD, because it's more prestigious to have a degree from the West. People imagine that if you have a degree from the West, then it means that you are more qualified than someone who studied in your own country. This is one of those few remaining areas in which people are still unself-conscious about expressing explicit belief in Western supremacy. It's getting less socially acceptable to be enamored with the West. Even if people still actually do feel enamored with the West, it's less acceptable socially to express that explicitly, but not in the area of education. People will still say, as if it's a fact of nature, that Western education is the best in the world, and they'll pursue higher education in Europe or America or wherever else, or they'll push their kids to do that. Because this aspect of psychological colonization hasn't ever really been challenged or confronted, but it has to be. This is a crucial point, really, because this mindset is going to block everything else about psychological decolonization. I mean, I'm sorry to put it this way, but if you think that whiter education is higher education, then you'll never be able to see yourself or see your teachers or see your scholars or your experts as anything but inadequate and inferior.
And that's the absolute truth, because some of us feel like we have to go to the quote unquote Ivy League college in order to receive a good education. Now, I've seen brothers who haven't stepped in a college at all debate these college professors and just spank them. So I'm not going to speak against education, because in order for us to actually know what's going on as far as what they're teaching, we actually have to know it also, because we can't go to battle with anyone, you know, intellectually spar with someone if we don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I'll never speak against education. I will speak against indoctrination. Don't apply their so-called education to yourself. You take what you need. It's like when you eat food, when it enters your system, it distributes the nutrients throughout your body, and the rest of it is waste. And what does the waste do? Either you urinate or you defecate the waste out of you, what you don't need in you. And that's how you have to do with some of the information, because that's what some of the information is defecation and is urination. And that's how we should see, the educational system.
And of course, this is a false perception of reality imposed by colonialism and Eurocentric narratives that forever casts the people of the global South as nothing but supporting side characters in the story of the world. And that story is a work of fiction. You're not only believing lies about yourself and your nations, but you're believing lies about the West. Lies about the West that even Westerners don't believe anymore. I mean, it's a strange state of affairs when the only people left in the world who still cling to the idea of Western supremacy are non-Westerners. I mean, you're like someone who's trying to jump from the iceberg onto the Titanic after they've collided. For too long, we've been led to believe that Western education is supreme, that a degree from the West is more valuable and signifies a greater level of expertise and higher standards than a degree from one of the universities in our own country. But look, higher education in the Muslim world and in the global South not only competes with the West, but it often surpasses the West. That's the reality. Our people are just as intelligent, they're just as educated as Westerners, and usually even more so. It's not prestigious to hold a degree from the West. That doesn't make you any more qualified or more capable than anyone else. Our education institutions in the global South and in the Muslim world are nurturing some of the brightest minds on this planet. Minds that challenge the status quo, minds that innovate and minds that create, and that can connect the modern world with our heritage, with our culture, with our deen, with our history, for a more comprehensive and contextualized understanding. Because look, we don't live in your context. We don't exist as your supporting cast in a movie about you. I mean, we are talking about America. It's a vacuum. It's an isolated, peculiar anomaly of a society. We don't live or understand the world in that contextual vacuum. Our context is a continuum from the first Laylatul Qadr, when Rasulullah began receiving wahi, until this Ramadan, 1,457 Hijri years later. We're part of a train of transmission of Islam from that time until today and onwards into the countless generations of the future. That's our context. And that automatically gives our education and our scholars and our academics and our students a more enlightened, a more illuminated appreciation of learning and knowledge. And it contextualizes the concept of excellence, what it means, what it's for, why it matters. And it has nothing to do with you or your context. We were serious about education for centuries. I mean, the oldest university in the world is our university. At least 2 centuries before they even had a university in Europe. If our education was deteriorated, it was under colonization. And it's still today psychological, mental colonization that makes us continue to imagine that our education systems are inadequate. You know, all they really have left in the West is this Western-centric ranking system for universities telling the world that they have the best universities. But that's just branding, like a handbag. It's actually only worth $20, but they're selling it for $200 because of the logo. the actual value of Western education is mediocre at best these days. You know, the best eye doctor that I ever had and the best pair of glasses that I ever had was made in Gaza and was by a doctor in Gaza. And I have some pretty complex issues with my eyesight, but that doctor was able to identify and understand those problems within maybe 3 minutes. And then he made me the best prescription lenses that I've ever had. And that's just one example out of many examples from my own life and experience. Without exception, I have found that the knowledge and skill levels of professionals in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa far surpass anything that I ever encountered when I was living in the US. All educated and trained in their own countries. The landscape of higher education in our part of the world is evolving rapidly. I mean, there's a surge in institutions and student enrollments throughout the Muslim world and throughout the global South. Our countries are witnessing unprecedented growth in institutional numbers and student populations. We are actively shaping the future of academia in the world. Meanwhile, enrollment in higher education in the West is in free fall. I mean, no one can afford it. And the quality and the utility of the education that they get isn't worth it. You know, I used to tutor a high school student in Turkey, and the things that they were learning at that level of school, high school, was beyond what bachelor's degree students study in America. The depth and the breadth of their study, the military discipline and structure of their education was astonishing. It was so impressive. So we need to shake off this notion that there's any prestige attached to a Western degree. And in fact, we need to shake off this idea that a degree has anything to do with prestige. Again, it's just like an overpriced handbag. A handbag has a purpose, and it isn't prestige. Education has a purpose, and it isn't prestige. If you start focusing on the actual purposes of things, then maybe you won't be as misled. Maybe you won't be as fooled and misdirected the way that they're trying to do to you.
I've seen people with degrees in education. You see them in these schools. I know people who have sociology degrees, and they're in, the schools, they're in the teen centers, they're in the youth centers, and they don't know what to teach the children. They don't know what type of activities to keep the children in the centers, but they have the degrees. And I've seen people walk off the street that never seen a college, have the students not wanting them to leave the center, gravitate all the students towards them with activities that the children enjoy. So the degree madness is just what it is. Madness. They stick their chest out. I got this degree. I got a BA degree. I got a master's degree. I got a doctorate degree. I got a BS degree. And basically it's all BS, if you ask me.
Because again, the education, the learning that's taking place in our schools is top notch. And it's producing people with outstanding skills and acumen. And that's what education is supposed to do. Your degree is supposed to signify that you know something. It isn't supposed to be a banner declaring your class status and your level of privilege. Because again, if you attach high status and privilege to having a mediocre Western education, just because it is Western, then you are reinforcing colonized mentalities. You're attaching value to Westernness and giving that more value than the actual value of your education or the actual standard of your education. Like it matters more to you that you got your mediocre education in the West than it matters that it is a mediocre education. Like the mediocrity of the education is somehow trumped by the fact that you got that in the West. That somehow that changes the mediocrity to excellence. Well, it doesn't. And if this attitude persists, we're not going to get the most genuinely qualified people into the positions that they need to be in order for your society to flourish and succeed. You're going to be putting people in positions who worship the West. and who belittle their own society and their society's achievements and its history and its culture and its beliefs and its heritage. In other words, you're going to be putting people in charge of your country, of your society, who look at you with the same disdain that the colonizers do. And they're going to run things in accordance with what they think the colonizers will approve of, because they're hopelessly mesmerized by the West, to the extent that they think Western approval is more important than the flourishing of your society and the success of your society. They will actually be opposed to political independence and economic sovereignty, because they hold their own people in contempt. And they think that nothing is good unless the West is being obeyed or being emulated. And that's a massive threat to your society. Really, it's an existential threat. Because, I mean, look, the way the West has run their own societies has resulted in a miserable situation, a catastrophic situation. If you follow them, you will ruin your society the same way that they ruined theirs. And we know that's true because they have ruined theirs. And I mean that quite literally. They're not even reproducing. They're dying out. The way that they've run their societies, run their economies, run their economic and political system has left them with dwindling populations, to the point where they're replacing themselves with robots and automation. That's not a successful model. And the fact that it's an unsuccessful model is part of the whole reason why the global economy is shifting out of the West. If you follow their way, they will destroy the East and they will destroy the South the same way that they destroyed their own lands within the next century or less. No, this has to be stopped. Our psychological decolonization is necessary, literally, for the existential longevity of the human race, because the mentality of the colonizers is inherently self-destructive. There's nothing to learn from that except what not to do and how not to run a society. So yes, it is fundamentally dangerous to hold their education as being better than ours, because it absolutely is not. I would even support giving hiring preferences to graduates who have degrees from local institutions, not only because they're very likely better qualified, but also just to break that colonized mindset once and for all. You know, if no Muslims and no one else in the global South went to study in the West, if we boycotted Western universities and institutions for the next 2 or 3 generations of students, say, it wouldn't decrease our number of scholars, our number of experts and professionals in the slightest. And the quality of our scholars and the quality of our experts and the quality of our professionals wouldn't be even slightly lowered. We lose nothing by not sending our people over there to get overpriced, mediocre education, and we gain nothing by sending them over there, except maybe more people who will just prolong the misimpression that mediocre Western education is superior.
Again, I totally agree with everything this man has said. I like what he talked about. And now I'm going to go to something that's very insulting to me. Now, it's very insulting that people will attempt to influence us with someone who stood before us. You know, a lot of our people voted for Obama. A lot of our people did. And he hasn't done anything for our people. So much has happened on his watch. So much. Now, we're going to go to the election ritual.
Well, it's divide and conquer. I mean, if you wonder why American society is so divided, I mean, divided in so many ways. It isn't just that the divides are deep, it's that the divides are so many. Black and white, race against race, advocates of this issue against opponents of this issue, even men against women and women against men. There isn't a single category within that society that doesn't have some corresponding nemesis. It's just divide and conquer, playing out domestically. And Democrats and Republicans is just another one of these divisions, because the country is...
That's why I call it Republicrats. I would never attempt to distinguish one party from the other, These parties will act like they're against each other, but one thing they agree. They agree when it comes to us. I don't care which party you ask about us, they're going to have the same sentiment about us. So that's why I wouldn't attempt to choose either one of those parties, the jackass or the elephant. I would never join a party or crash a party I'm not invited to. That's why I say our people should have them fighting over our vote as a people. We should be our own party as a people and stop trying to join these parties and then not let people sway or tell us that we have to vote. They have a right to vote. You have a right to vote, and you have a right to not vote. They can't tell you you have to make a choice between two things that you don't rock with. It makes no sense. Telling you you have to choose. If you don't choose, they tell you you can, excuse me, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's nonsense. It is actually treasonous to vote for someone who's not going to do anything for your people. If they tell you they're not going to do anything for you, to not answer the question is also, to me, it's an answer. If you don't answer that question when I ask you what you're going to do for our people, and you don't answer that question, I'm going to make my own determination of what you're going to do or not do. Most of the time, it's going to be what you're not going to do. They run away from that question because they know they're not going to do a damn thing for our people. Which goes back to what I always say. If we are how we're supposed to be, it wouldn't matter who's in that office. Yet some of our people think there's a benevolent politician who's going to do something for our people. And if they do, it would be the first time.
Has been conquered by corporate economic imperialists. Look, I don't care who you vote for in November because power doesn't care who you vote for in November. I've said it before. If you imagine that unelected power of the private sector is going to entrust the public with deciding how things are going to be run and who's going to run things, then you're living in a fantasy. It's absurd. America has subverted, sabotaged, and strangled democracies all around the world. They've been interfering with, tampering with, rigging elections across the globe for decades.
Trying to establish democracy in other nations. This is how wicked the West is. They'll go to other nations attempting to establish democracy in those nations while they deny us democracy in our face. That's how hypocritical the West is, in particular, the United States.
For decades, from Haiti to Honduras, from Italy to Iran, from Syria to South Africa. They've toppled governments, assassinated elected officials, fixed elections, bribed and bullied and bulldozed democracies on every continent for a century. They don't think that any population in any country in the world can be trusted to elect leaders who will safeguard the interests of the American elite. So what makes you think that they're going to trust you?
When they're in your country trying to establish democracy, what they're trying to do is set up a puppet politician, a puppet regime, and a puppet government in those nations. Someone they can control. That's what they do. If they can't control whoever is the leader of that nation, prime minister, president, what have you, all of a sudden that person will become a terrorist. And they will start with their propaganda machine, beating the war drum, calling that leader a terrorist to justify doing what they do and have been doing in my lifetime. got a witness. I've seen it several times. If they are against America's foreign policy, that's exactly what they do. And not only that, if they ever did dirt with the United States, they got them. Why? They do the dirt with you to get the dirt on you. They know you did it because they was doing it with you. But being that they had the military might and the propaganda machine, they can always beat that war drum, calling someone a terrorist without establishing in the United Nations the criteria of what a damn terrorist is. Haven't done it to this date.
It's you with that power. They rig elections and install whoever they want in country after.
Peace to my brother Cuban Crisis and my brother Dre Cobb's music. If you ask anyone at the United Nations of what a terrorist is, they're not going to tell you because they want to go around calling anybody that they disagree with.
The country, but somehow you think that they're not going to do that in your country. Well, how naive can you be? Listen, the election cycle in America is nothing but a mechanism for what you can call the campaign industrial complex, whereby billions upon billions of dollars of contributions, your money, are funneled into the private sector. I mean, when you donate to a politician or you donate to a candidate, where do you think that money goes? It goes directly to business. You're not doing anything but increase the revenue streams of consultancies, ad agencies, analytics firms, PR firms, media companies, social media companies, digital marketing agencies, events coordinators, on and on. This is nothing but the public providing basically an economic stimulus package to unproductive industries. It's a wealth transfer that you yourselves are participating in. You're literally just donating money to the private sector and getting nothing in return. Getting nothing in return except that you get to watch the most expensive fan fiction movie about democracy ever produced.
Exactly.
I mean, look at the Democrats. Kamala Harris was just appointed as the nominee. She wasn't voted for. This is straight up succession, not election.
Yep.
There were no primaries. She hasn't had to outline her policy platform.
And that's a key point. She wiggled her way right in to become the nominee. She didn't, she wasn't in the primary. The runner-up should have been that person right behind that lost to Biden, who had the most votes that lost against Biden, to be the Democratic, the Democratic runner-up, as opposed to Biden winning the nomination. It shouldn't have been Harris. She wiggled her way right in. And that probably was the agenda, for her to wiggle her way right in. And they raised money for her. And, they played chess, put it that way. They played chess.
And no one needs her to do that. All she has to do is to not be Donald Trump. This is the logical demonization versus policy debate as a campaign strategy. No candidate has to win your approval as long as the whole election is framed in the lesser of two evils scenario. And what's the point of that?
If you choose the less of two evil, you're still choosing evil. If somebody put, some rotten fruit in front of you, one of them or just more rotten than the other, why would you make a choice? If you went inside a farmer's market and you seen rotten fruits and vegetables, and then you seen, that some of the fruit and vegetables are more rotten than the ones that you've seen, would you make a purchase, or would you just walk out and go somewhere else to your liking, where you would find something to your liking? You don't have to make a choice if you don't like what you see. Left or right, jackass or elephant.
That to make the pre-programmed win seem plausible, that's all. And to not leave any opening for dissent to manifest that might make the win seem implausible. Because, for instance, if voters actually have demands of this candidate or that candidate, and the candidate fails to address those demands, then it could cast doubt upon their eventual victory. And inevitably, if a candidate does address voter demands, well, that will always end up alienating some other faction of voters. So we don't talk about issues. We don't talk about how to deal with issues. We just rally behind our party's candidate in lockstep, because the other party's candidate is literally the devil incarnate.
Yep.
When you're operating in the lesser of two evils framework, you're always going to have decidedly low expectations of your chosen candidate, and that's perfect when the election is already fraudulent in the first place.
Exactly.
So this uncomplicates the rigging process. Yes, I said rigging, and don't think for a second, don't you imagine that that's a conspiracy theory, that the U.S. rigs elections.
It's not a conspiracy theory. That's the absolute truth, that they rig elections. I mean, how the George W. Bush election was rigged. The Hillary Clinton election was rigged. I knew Barack Obama was next when he spoke at the DNC. I said, he's next. He got next. When he spoke at the DNC in 2004, I said, that man got next. And he was next.
But between 1946 and 2000, America is documented to have interfered with, tampered with, malignly influenced, or outright rigged at least 88 elections, from Europe to Latin America to Asia to Africa. So again, if you think that they'll do this everywhere else, but your so-called democracy is pristine, I would have to ask you why you think so. Why would it be more important to the power structure to control the outcome of an election in, say, Guyana, than it would be for them to control the outcome of an election in the United States of America? Because yes, Guyana is one of the countries where America rigged elections in the past. I'm telling you, I don't care who you vote for, because power doesn't care who you vote for.
It's not, coincidental that this video is called The Election Ritual. And that's exactly what it is. It's a ritual that's taking place every 4 years. Everybody go out and they do this ritualistic casting of a vote. It's not saying you're not voting. It's just that they're going to select instead of elect. You can go out on that. Mostly it's always a cold, windy, rainy ass November day, every election day or election season. And you go out and cast your vote with naught. And they're going to put in that office who they want to put in that office.
Because the outcome is not determined by you.
Exactly, Cuban crisis, a ritualistic hamster wheel, going nowhere, treadmill type of thing.
Biden stepped aside because his pre-programmed victory could never be convincing. But look, Biden himself, the fact of Biden, a man who is literally in late-stage senility, a man who is visibly disintegrating before our eyes, the very fact that he was not only president, but was absolutely going to be run for another term, despite being a cadaver on strings, that should let you know that power does not reside in that office.
Wow.
Politicians serve two functions. The first is to distract you with the performance of democratic government. And
they have definitely lowered the bar of who can become president of the United States. The bar is lowered on records level. I mean, anybody can run for the president of the United States now. Anybody. I mean, I said that when Donald Trump won, when he was able to run after having all those charges before he became president. And now the fact that he has 34 conviction and he's able to run, that's definitely lowering the bar of who could be in the cesspool office. That's what it is. or in the cesspool government. Come on, they're finding cocaine in the hallways and every damn thing. Lower the bar. It's a cesspool.
And the second is to be effigies that can be burned to satisfy public anger when the policies dictated by the private sector impose misery on the population. So when an American asks me, who should they vote for? Or when they say that this one is better than that one, or at least not as bad as that one, and what do I think, and so on and so on and so on. Well, you may as well be asking me about which Marvel superhero is better than the other, because you're not talking to me about figures who have any real significance with regards to policy. You're not talking to me about figures who actually exert any control over anything. You're not talking about the real existing power structure. You're asking me to give you an opinion about a fictional scenario in which your government wields independent power. As long as you're fixated on this charade, there's no danger whatsoever of you ever having any impact on policy. You're just facilitating and collaborating with the divide and conquer tactics of the owners and controllers of global financialized capital. And I don't know how you can be so propagandized, to be honest. I don't know how you can be so propagandized that you can't even notice that actually your own media does tell you every day that the government is not in charge. I mean, how many times have you read or how many times have you heard in the media, the market will decide? We'll have to see what the market does and so on. But when they say the market, they don't mean you and I, they mean big business, multinational corporations, asset managers, stock market whales, not voters, not citizens, not Democrats, and not Republicans. You live in an oligarchy, and your so-called democracy is only performed as a distraction to keep you from noticing that fact. Now, for this election in the US, as I've said, Harris and Trump are just mascots representing two different factions of the OCGFC. And it's going to be just like what happened in Venezuela. The only way that Trump can win is by trying to out-rig the election rigging of the Democrats. But the Democrats are the incumbents, like Maduro was. So they have the advantage of overseeing the succession, and Harris is likely to win. The only thing that Trump can do is to try to boost his own popularity to the point that Harris's pre-programmed victory looks less plausible. But like I said before, it's not musical chairs where both candidates are walking in circles around the chair until the music stops, and then they have to race for the seat. Kamala is already in the seat, just like Maduro, and it's harder to get someone out of that seat than it is to just sit in it. So it looks like the neocons will probably stay in the White House. And that just means that the real battle between the military-industrial complex OCGFC and the global-oriented OCGFC, that battle is just going to go on a while longer. But if you're fool enough to think that you have to drop everything in order to ensure that Kamala Harris will win and Trump will lose, well, then you're literally like someone who can watch those old Roadrunner cartoons and still get worried and anxious about whether or not the coyote is going to catch him. I mean, I know it's important for you to think that you have some kind of control, but the truth is, the reality is you're not writing this story, and you're not writing how this story goes. And as long as you think that you are writing how this story goes or participating in it in any way whatsoever, then that just ensures that you will always be nothing but a spectator. Unless and until you redirect your activism towards the private sector, and I mean organize and mobilize with the understanding that,
Exactly.
for example, corporations are political entities.
Exactly. We should be organizing on the private sector and not worry about these elections and not looking for a benevolent politician on any level to do anything for us. It's enough of us, and we got enough resources to make it happen for ourselves. It's just that we got too many thinkers that's not willing to work together, don't want to do a damn thing collectively.
So treat them as such, deal with them as such, impose expectations and demands upon them as such. Unless and until you do that, all your get out the vote initiatives, all your campaigning, all your voting will never do anything for social and political change except to ensure that it won't happen. Boeing, for example, just used your government to make around $20 billion.
Yep.
Boeing, Raytheon, and all the other merchants of death and destruction.
And Lockheed Martin just got a big contract with the United States military. They're going to supply the United States with their weapons. They just got the contract. Lockheed Martin
just got $20 billion of your money to keep the genocide going in Gaza. That's their policy. Zionism is their policy. Genocide is their policy, and they're doing it for money. And they give almost evenly to the Democrats as they do to the.
And that's the absolute truth. It's a lot of money to be made on death and destruction. That's why I call them merchants of death. Because if you're building those, if that's what you manufacture, that's what you sell throughout the world, you are a merchant of death because that's what you manufacture, bombs and guns.
Republicans, except they give slightly more to the Democrats. And it's almost even between what they give to Kamala Harris and to Donald Trump. They contributed a bit more to Harris. I shouldn't actually say contribute, I should say invest, because they give that money as an investment.
Exactly. They give that money as an investment because they are lobbyists. When they give to these candidates, it's an investment. That candidate has to do something for them. They're not giving these millions and billions of dollars to, well, hundreds of millions of dollars to these candidates because they like them. It's an investment.
From which they expect astronomical returns, which they will get. These are the entities that control your policy. It's not your ballot, it's their billions.
These lobbyists control policies. If these lobbyists, these millionaires, the multinational companies, these Fortune 500 companies want a policy passed, that's how they do it. They lobby their people together and they endorse a candidate, and that candidate is going to do what they say. They're going to capitulate, acquiesce. That candidate is their man or woman.
Your government is captured, and your country has been captured, and power and decision making has been transferred from the public sector to the private sector. Your laws and your policies are written by corporate lawyers, not by congressmen.
Exactly.
You know, your democracy has actually become like the British monarchy.
More like what Malcolm said. Democracy, it's in the title. Democracy is hypocrisy. That's what democracy is. A bunch of self-righteous hypocrites want to be the standard bearers all over the world, but they are nothing of what they say they are. And nothing is afforded to the people that's in the so-called, well, it's a constitution.
It's just an empty tradition. You know, you go out to vote the same way that British people will go out and line the streets just to watch the king pass by on a horse and carriage. It's just a nod to the lore and heritage of your society. It's a ritual that has no real significance beyond the psychological and the emotional. It's a collective, society-wide, self-soothing gesture. America is a corporate authoritarian system cosplaying as a democracy.
Yep.
And everybody around the world sees you. You know, you people who are campaigning for Trump or campaigning for Harris, everyone around the world sees you as someone who's like at a cosplay event and dressed up like Iron Man, but who actually thinks that the buttons on his costume work. We have to elect Trump, or the meteor is going to destroy the earth. We have to elect Harris, or multi-dimensional aliens will kill us all. You're really invested in the fantasy storyline. But nobody in the world thinks that your democracy exists except for you. Because we know all too well what your democracy looks like when you...
Because we are, you know, other people are on the outside looking in, and they see what's going on. They can see better on the outside looking in. That's why they have people around the ring in a fight, counting the punches. You know, the people around the ring, they can see, they're outside and they're watching the fight. And that's the equivalent to what the people outside this nation see. You know, only the propaganda machine can convince somebody that they should come to the United States because it's the land of the free, the home of the brave. But once they get here, they see it's the same damn hypocrisy that's in their own country. The same hypocrisy. It's objective, it's hypocrisy. In the Western Hemisphere, the West, again, they love being they want to be the standard bearers of what freedom, justice, equality, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that's nothing but damn cliche. That's for a certain class of people. People make it, but if you look at these people who look down on us, who's one of us, what did they have to do to get to where they're at? They said, yeah, I worked hard. Yeah. And you also compromise yourself, your dignity, your virtue, your soul, and every damn thing. Peace to the sister, Sharice the realist. Thanks for tapping in, sis.
You export it to us, and you have the same one that you sent us, which means that you don't have one either. Look, you are not constituents of politicians, you're constituents of companies, and you need to organize yourselves along these lines. Democratize private sector power. At some point, your activism and your strategy has to actually be informed by the real existing power dynamics in your society, not just by the official version of the power structure that they taught you in civics class. Until you do that, I'm telling you that the harder you work for this party or the harder you work for that party, well, you're doing nothing but fortify and reinforce your own disenfranchisement and your own irrelevance.
Now, I'm going to go to what I was talking about earlier before I played this video. It's insulting to me when they try to put someone in front of us to control us through who they think can influence us, because they control that person. Now, it's insulting for them to even suggest that they can send Barack Obama to us and convince us to do anything. To me, that's insulting, because Barack Obama is not one of us. He's not. Never have been one of us. I don't care where his father is from and what his father is. He's not one of us. It's the same as sending Harris to us. She's not one of us and he's not one of us. But for them to send Barack Obama to us, and he called himself chastising us because we don't support Kamala Harris, that's insulting. It would have been that situation that I talked about earlier. Most of the time when somebody say, with all due respect, they're about to disrespect you. That would have been that moment for me. Mr. Obama, with all due respect, who the hell you think you are to come to us telling us what we should do? You didn't listen to us when you had 8 years of that office. You didn't listen to us. You did nothing for us. You pushed agendas that served to our detriment. So I dare you come to us and tell us who we should be voting for, or we should be voting at all. It's insulting to me. Now, I'm going to go to CNN. Obama's blunt message to black men sparks a fierce debate.
Is Obama in the wrong here with how he's talking about black men in particular and singling them out in this way?
Yeah, let's start from here. He is still the greatest living retail politician. He's objectively a top 15 president, but even he can swing and miss sometimes. And here he swung and missed. Here's what he did.
He swung and he missed for 8 years during his tenure as president of the United States. He swung and he missed. People talking about the health care and these other stuff, all these other things that didn't serve to our good, among other things that he endorsed and he perpetuated.
Harris has been very strategic about when and how she's spoken about gender and race. And he stepped on that. And when she hasn't spoken about it, he stepped on that message. And I think also with those comments, and there's more to this, but let me just start with this, is that he forgets, at least in that moment, that she doesn't get the benefit of being a historic first the way he did. She's a
And maybe
historic first woman if she
maybe
wins.
that's part of the problem. That's what he's
Yeah.
saying.
And
Why doesn't she get the benefit?
Yeah.
Well,
She doesn't get the benefit because prior to her winning the nomination, she wasn't coming around us. She did like the typical politician. You don't even know them, and they come around to us when they want something from us, and they don't even tell us that they're going to do something for us. That's the problem I have when these politicians come around to us and don't even offer us anything, but they're asking for something. And we always have to be the sucker when it comes to these politicians and these elections. Everybody gets something besides us, and they're so used to getting our votes and giving us nothing to the point that they look at us crazy when we ask for something. We should have been asking for something.
first of all, we have to remember that this is a thing. Like Barack Obama has a history of kind of chastising specifically Black men. And like the question is whether what he said is relevant, right? Because there are a few Black men, like there are a few white men who are more conservative than Black women, and more white men are conservative than white women. But the point is, does this work, right? And if there's no evidence that it's true or that it works, and he doesn't do that with, like, you've never heard him say, why don't you?
Who is Barack Obama to tell us that it's not acceptable for us to sit out the election? He's telling us that we have to make a choice. No, we don't. If we were like we're supposed to be, it doesn't matter who's in a office. They push that on us, that fear mongering on us, where you can't do this and you can't do that if you don't vote. Go out and vote to change this. And vote. It hasn't done it. If the president do something for us, it'd be the first time. It would be the exact first time if a president did anything for our people. So it's the same as all elections. I say, I've never voted. 58 years old, never voted for a president because that's not my damn business. They haven't done anything in my parents' lifetime, and they haven't done anything in my lifetime. So I don't see why going out and voting for anybody.
White women stop being racist and vote for me or Kamala Harris, or they don't talk to Hispanic voters or LGBTQ voters. It's only specifically Black.
So closed minds don't get fed. Closed mouths don't get fed. Closed minds don't learn a damn thing.
Black men, that he takes this tact
Why
doesn't work.
Why do you think that
because
is?
you know why?
No,
Because
tell me.
The second most loyal, the most progressive group of men on the planet, they don't care about. They assume that they have their vote and they don't have to do anything.
Exactly. They assume that they automatically going to vote. We're going to vote for them because the Democratic Party is so used to our people voting for them, and the Republican Party don't even give a damn whether we vote for them or not. So we got two people that don't give a damn. So I don't understand why we even participate in this process.
Anything for it. And the point of this is that if you don't vote for Kamala Harris and you're a Black man, something must be wrong with you. That is the subtext of everything that they're saying.
Well, this is what I would say to this, because I was there when the NABJ interviewed Kamala Harris in Philadelphia. And what Kamala Harris said then was that you asked that question with the assumption that Black men are in somebody's pocket. You can't make that assumption. Black men are just like any other group. They have their interests, and I'm working to get their vote. I don't expect to get it because I am Black. I am working to get their vote. And that is what she said. And so I think we have to focus on what she said about Black men. And I think we also have to focus.
This woman been Black for probably 2.5 months. Prior to that, she wasn't saying that. She was not saying that she was one of us 3 months ago. She said that when she wiggled her way to become a nominee. Prior to that, even when she was, when she won as a vice president, she said she's the first Indian American vice president. Didn't identify with our people.
Focus on the fact that most black men are going to vote for Kamala Harris anyway. That is the reality. But I think that in talking to black people every day, which I do as a radio host, I've heard some black men say, I'm not voting for her because she is a woman. I have heard that. And I think that is reprehensible.
Okay.
I got to be honest.
So he's heard it. I mean, are we, when I say we, I mean the collective we as the country, afraid to just talk about a thing?
I think
is
you can
Obama
talk
saying,
about it, but if he's
calling
summoning
a thing
Barack Obama to fix a problem, you have to wonder if this fixes a problem. If I am interested in getting Kamala Harris elected, then I am upset because he hurt the thing, the strategy that she was employing to win.
Well, I think part of what has to happen, though, is that you have to have that conversation in private. There are some things you talk about in the barbershop when there's no cameras, right? There's some things that you talk about at home. There's some things that are family business. And I think the mistake that Barack Obama made was to take family business in the street.
I didn't have a problem. Let me let Coleman in there.
Shaming voters is a terrible idea. It was bad when Hillary Clinton did it with deplorables. It was bad when Mitt Romney did it on the eve of the election. Even if there's a grain of truth to it and there's the occasional radio caller that's going to admit to that sentiment, let's actually look at the fact that Biden was struggling with black voters, and that was a topic of conversation over and over again. So it's not about sexism.
Let's hold on one second. Let me take a look at this. Let's take a look at the numbers, because I think just to see what we're talking about here, there's been a progressive decline in overall support among black men and, to a lesser degree, black women for the Democratic nominee. Biden was doing better among black men than Harris appears to be right now, based on some of the better polling that looks at these demographics. So I guess the other part of this is, you're talking about keep the business private. You're saying he's messing up the strategy, but the numbers are the numbers. And he's trying to fix a numerical problem that she has, a math problem that she has.
Right. I agree with most of what you were saying, Solomon. I don't think the problem is that he spoke it out loud. I think the problem is that he singled out black men. In other words, there is a sexism component to this race. There was a sexism component to the Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump race. Right. If Trump wins, he will have only ever beaten women. I can't give you a...
The fact that he think he can call out us is problematic to me. Who is he to think that he can come to us and tell us anything? He must think he's somebody for him to try to come to tell us anything about making choices. That's the audacity that I'm talking about. And that's the problems I have with them sending people who they control, trying to get control of us through somebody who they think actually influence us. It's crazy for them to even suggest that Barack Obama influenced black men. And he don't. He's somebody who I never cared for because of his his deceptive way. He's very deceptive, and he thinks that he could come to us because he looks like one of us. He can sing Al Green, he could play basketball, he could do all these stereotypical things, reinforcing stereotypes and pander to us, and we're supposed to accept them. No, I don't. I never did.
A number, but sexism is in the mix here, but it's not black men specifically. I think it's men, not black men. And that, I think, is part of where Obama went wrong.
And I think we also have to look at numbers and actual statistics, right? Because all of those reliable polling has a small demographic of black men. You're talking about most of them poll at most 40, 50 black men, right?
Well, I don't think in this particular case, just to be clear about what we were looking at there, the exit polls were from the actual elections that we had. And then the Pew polling, Pew looks more closely at specific demographics. Right. And they do that in a way that we as a news organization, deemed to be a reliable way of looking at this. Not every poll is reliable, but we think this one is.
And when you remember now, we had the same conversation 2 years ago about Stacey Abrams. Why won't black men support Stacey Abrams? And after the election was over, we saw the numbers, and black men in Georgia, where I live, supported Stacey Abrams at higher rates than they supported Biden. So we have this narrative, and then you have the truth, and you have this conjecture, and
but the
this
candidates
anecdotal
are
evidence.
speaking with their actions. Kamala Harris next week is sitting down with Charlemagne the God to talk to black men. They're being explicit about it,
And she should.
But, right. So let me play for you what happened on Charlemagne's show yesterday when they were talking about a call that they'd received from a black man in Florida. This was kind of in the context of the storms, but they played the call. Listen.
It don't matter what they is, Democrat, Republican, they all treason, man. They all about money, bro. None of these people care about American people, bro. This shit hurt, bro. This shit hurt, bro. People wake up every day just want to live their life, bro. And you got these greedy snakes, man. You got these greedy snakes call themselves government service people, bro. And they don't give a damn.
Yeah.
And the thing about that call was that, you know, they said it's kind of representative of what they hear often on that show, which is why she's going there.
Well, I think that you have people who are angry. I think that you have people who are planted. I think that you have people.
And you have people who foolishly think that a politician will actually do something for any of us. I don't understand how or why any of us would get that angry concerning politics and politicians. I don't understand what would make a grown-ass man get that upset about a politician. If you've been in this world, you know, long enough to understand what politics is, you should know, you should not be highly upset because a politician hasn't done anything for our people. No. I think my sentiment is it's up to us. It always has been up to us. We shouldn't be dependent on this. It should be us who we should be dependent on to, you know, change our condition, our dynamic. It's not up to a politician. You waiting for that? A politician to change your condition? Bruh. Just like the spook God, you're going to die waiting for them to do that. You're going to die waiting for the spook God to come and save you. When the God that you are looking for, all you have to do is go and look in the mirror and behold, you see that God that you've been looking for. So if we're going to keep waiting for a benevolent politician or spook God to come save us when God is not in the sky, is closer to you than you think, we got to stop the foolishness and thinking and getting upset about this and stop having these arguments about politicians, because neither one, I don't care which side, who you vote for, they don't have a policy they're going to pass to benefit us.
People who are sent to troll. I think that you have people who are sent with a specific message to deliver to Black people. And you see it online. I hear it on the radio. I see it on social media. I see it on our Facebook feed as we're doing our show. And so I think some of that is real, and I think some of it is manufactured. I think some of it is performative. But I do think that there are Black men at two ends of the spectrum. There's the old Black man that's going to say, well, I'm not going to vote for a woman because the Bible says men should be in charge, right? There's that guy. But then there's the young Black man who only gets his news from social media and nowhere else. And so he's not watching us. He's not listening. He's not reading me or Michael. He's not reading David. He's not doing any of that. His news comes from social media. And so he has a specific point of view and is likely to believe conspiracy theories. The question is, do people who vote, are they on social media or are they on Social Security? I think they're on Social Security.
Well, I think that the problem is that no one's disputing that this government in this country doesn't treat that they treat black men okay, or that we don't have a gripe with either party, right? Because if you talk to black people privately, they will have a gripe with the Democratic Party. The point is, how do you fix it? And why don't you approach that solution the same way you approach the solution with white people and white women who don't vote Democratic, the white men who don't vote Democrat, the Hispanics who don't vote? Why do you
Exactly,
take the specific
exactly.
tact for one demographic and not the entire political strategy that you use for everyone else?
I think the answer is what you said a minute ago, which is that Democrats have to get out of the habit of taking the black vote for granted. Yeah, Trump got 19% of black men, 12% of black people last time around. Like, it's going to be a bigger number this time. Adapt to that. Don't just assume.
I think we're talking a lot about race, but in many ways, gender is the key variable here, because even if you look at white people, the Republican Party has been getting a higher and higher share of the male vote. The parties have become more gendered overall, and it's true of Hispanics. So what we're seeing among black people is similar to the trends we're seeing among other races. So that's the key question: is why are the parties getting more gendered?
Well, I think the AP did a poll last month in the middle of the month, and what they found was that the overwhelming majority of black voters, whether they are male or female, favor Kamala Harris over Donald Trump. They had a positive view of her, they had a negative view of him, and there wasn't much difference between men and women. So I think that when we're talking about this, we're talking about people who are loud and wrong. I think that's what's happening, is that we hear these voices, they're very loud, and we think that there are more of them than there are. And we'll see when the election happens.
Now we're going to go to the video in question that they're talking about.
I'm going to go ahead and just...
Barack Obama speaking to a room full of brothers going in on Trump, and he's endorsing Harris, of course, and chides black men over excuses for not voting for Harris, which is crazy. He feels he has the right to come and talk to us about not voting for Kamala Harris. This is outright gall. This is gall. This is not audacity. This is gall.
Just speak some truths, if you don't mind. Because my understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now,
my brother, Cuban Crisis, what you said was the absolute truth about, when he was going to church, Jeremiah Wright was his minister, and that was his church that he attended, he and his wife. And Jeremiah Wright and the Minister Farrakhan, is cool to this date. And not only that, Barack Obama used to be around the minister too. There's pictures that came out with Barack Obama prior to becoming a candidate. He was with the minister. But let me tell you how the minister is. The minister distanced himself from Obama. He could have easily, when Obama, when Hillary Clinton asked Barack Obama, would he condemn Farrakhan? And would you turn down his endorsement and all this other foolishness? He said, I can't tell people to not like me. That was Barack Obama's answer. But he went in, he spoke out against the minister. The minister could have easily put those pictures out and say, okay, you saying this about me, but you was with me this day or that day. We got pictures together. He held those pictures, didn't even put them out, because he knew our people wanted to see this man in that office. And he told our people this man is not going to do for us when he get that office, because he's going to conduct business as usual. That's not his office. It's their office. They put him there, so he's going to be their puppet for the next 8 years. And he told our people that. He said, don't put your faith and your trust in an elected official. He could have easily put those pictures out, showing them together.
I also want to say that that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly and say that when you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes.
Now, this is a bunch of nonsense. Peace to my good brother. Salute to my comrade. Talk You Talk Media, my brother Greedy Vegan. Salute to you. This is a bunch of nonsense. See how he's trying to pander and identify with us when he really don't. He don't know anything about us. He, in his sentiment, has risen above our condition. But he comes to us. That's what they do. They come to us when they want something. Now, Kamala Harris becoming president will benefit him. And that's the only reason why he's doing it, because it will benefit him. That's the reason why he endorsed Biden, because it will benefit him. They're all constituents. So that's why they'll send him out to try to convince us that we should be going out and voting automatically Democrat, when I think we shouldn't be voting at all. I'm not going to tell somebody what they should do. I'm just telling you, we shouldn't vote. But if you're going to vote your conscience. And don't tell somebody who you should be voting for. Don't let nobody tell you that. This man going around telling brothers that it's unacceptable for them to sit out the election. It's unacceptable. Who is Barack Obama to tell us what's acceptable and what's not? He really think he's somebody to us.
From those experiences, who's had to work harder and do more and overcome and achieves the second highest office in the land, and is putting forward concrete proposals to directly address the things that are vital in our neighborhoods and our communities, from housing to making sure that our mothers and our fathers and our grandparents can afford medicine, and making sure that we are dealing with prices that are too high and rents that are too high, and are committed to making sure that we maintain the Affordable Care Act, so everybody's got help, and cares about things like education and entrepreneurship in our neighborhoods. And that's on one side. And on the other side, you have someone who has consistently shown disregard, not just for the communities, but for you as a person.
People will tell us that Kamala Harris is only the vice president and that she can't do anything now, that we have to elect her in order for her to do something. But she managed to get, $26 billion for her own people. She managed to do that. So I'm not trying to hear that we have to put her in office in order for her to do something. It don't necessarily have to be something monetarily. It could have been something as simple as the George Floyd Act. It could have been something as simple as that. You know, she would endorse a bill that make Asian people a protected class of people. Do you know what that means? When you say someone is a protected class of people over other people, do you know what that means? It should be laws that protect everybody inclusively, not laws that protect a certain people. A certain people. And then this same man got a law passed that protected people, made people a protected class of people based on a sexuality. Do you know how sick that is when it should be laws that protect everybody the same way? If you pass a hate crime law and say there's no lynching, there's no murder, there's no this, we'll make every murder a hate crime. Murder should automatically be a hate crime. Because in order for you to murder someone, meaning that you meant to do it, because you can kill somebody by mistake. It's a difference between killing someone and murdering them. If you murder somebody, that means you meant to do it. It was your intention to kill them, as opposed to killing somebody by mistake. Every murder should be a hate crime. But no, they have certain people who are protected. They are a protected class of people, a certain ethnicity who is a protected class of people over other people. Those very same people can be the aggressor, but being that they are a protected class of people, you get arrested and they're the aggressor.
And you're thinking about sitting out? But, you know, because of Pookie might be. And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with it. Because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president. And you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that.
Not here approaching them as a damn feminist. That's what he's doing now. He's approaching them as a feminist. My sentiment is any man or woman who didn't come up through the rank and file in the military should not be called commander-in-chief. You didn't come up through our rank and file in the military, so why should I have to salute you when you come off Air Force One? Some of these soldiers been in the military for years. You telling me I'm a 5-star general and I gotta salute you when you come off the plane when you never came through our rank and file? And you're gonna send us to do what you are not willing to do? Nah, I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to do that.
And I think anybody you are talking to in a barbershop, anybody you are talking to in your house, in your family, at church, who is coming with that kind of attitude, I think you have to ask them, well,
it's not exactly my brother Cuban crisis. It's not even that, but he's approaching it as a feminist. It's not even that. It's the fact that what she's done to brothers, okay, that's one thing. And the fact that, 3-4 months ago, she wasn't saying she was one of us. So that's not the problem with me, because I wouldn't wipe my ass with a politician. That'd be desecration. But that's not my problem. The fact that these brothers are seeing it that way. Prior to her wiggling her way into, being a candidate, she wasn't identifying with us. And the way she's identifying with us now is so disrespectful anyway. It's disrespectful how she's identifying with us. By who she picked to be among her is disrespectful. She didn't come to any of these brothers. She came to who she think we like, who she think could get her votes through them. Meg Thee Stallion, Quavo, entertainers. We are more than entertainers. She didn't come to any intellectuals. She came to Dale Hughley, Steve Harvey, some damn buffoonish ass comedians, and she came to entertainers. Forget all the intellectuals. She didn't come to any of them. We have so many. We got Professor James Smalls. I could name some intellectuals she could have came with. She could have came to economists, activists, but she didn't come to them. She came to entertainers, and that's how she pandered to us. Why? Because that's how she see us. How they pander to you is how they see us, and it's on both sides. Donald Trump tried it with a sneaker. Okay, tried it with a sneaker. He got a sneaker. And then he wanted to relate to us. Okay, we respect rappers that got shot. We respect that. So he gets shot, allegedly, and he comes out to 50 Cent. That's how they pander to us, because all they'll ever see us as is the damn entertainment.
How can that be? Because the women in our lives have been getting our backs this entire time. They've been raising us and working and having our backs. And
now, see how he's doing this, you're going to Big Mama now and our mothers, and that's not what she is. Kamala Harris not only didn't raise a child, she damn sure didn't raise a black child. So what the hell is he talking about? She didn't raise a black man. She has no children of her own. So she didn't raise a black man. Why aren't any of these brothers saying that to him? She didn't raise a black man. The children she raising is a white man's children. Can't even get that. She didn't raise any children, but she damn sure didn't raise no black man.
And when we get in trouble, when the system's not working for us, they're the ones who are out there marching and protesting. And so now you're thinking about sitting out or even supporting somebody who has a history of denigrating you?
This shit is really,
because you think that's a sign of strength, because that's what being a man is, putting women down. That's not acceptable. That's not it. This shouldn't even be a question.
That is actually funny to me. That's funny to me. For him to go there That's funny. I want to thank all the family for joining me this evening. I appreciate it. Yeah, the topic, was Western degeneracy, objectification, and hypocrisy. And this is the hypocrisy that is displayed on a daily basis. Hypocrisy is the American way. Hypocrisy is as American as damn apple pie in baseball. Objectification and degeneracy is also as American as apple pie in baseball. But I want to thank all the family for joining me this evening. My brother, Cuban Crisis. My brother, Talk Your Talk Media, Greedy Vegan. My brother, Big Dog Philly OG. My sister, Sharice the Realist, thanks for joining me. My brother, Dre Cobb's Music. My brother, Relentless. My brother, Milestone Thoughts. My brother, Smoke Signal. Thank you all for joining me. I appreciate it. Tuesday, I will be doing a stream called Intellectual Mass Debaters. Join me Tuesday evening as I do a stream called Intellectual Mass Debaters. I'm going to do a promo, and then we're going to sign off. I think I did my job this evening, sharing with the family. If you haven't gotten my wife's book, go to Amazon, go in the books, FYRE, Angela King James, and get my wife's book, Fire. Fire 2 is coming out soon. But here's the promo.
Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must-read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
The once goal-driven, ambitious Sapphire turns to the street life after the sudden death of her big brother Dre. Dre's best friend Devontae tries to honor his homeboy's last request of looking out for his baby sister. A rebellious Sapphire makes it very difficult for Devontae to carry out his promise.
I thank you all for joining me. Until next time, this is The Enemy's Public. I am Bro.Nasir. Like, share, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section. Peace.